Hey everyone, you are listening to another episode of the All Things Private Practice podcast. I'm your host, Patrick.Casale, joined today by friend and colleague Melvin Varghese. He is a psychologist in Pennsylvania and also the host of the Selling the Couch podcast, Selling the Couch community, course creator, extraordinaire. So, really happy to have you on. He also has the most enjoyable voice on podcasting to listen to. So, really glad to have you here.
Patrick, I'm so grateful for you. And I don't know, listen to your voice and I'm like, this is a really nice voice. So I might have some competition here.
Do you remember when we were in a JETA summit and someone told you that you would be someone they would want to read nursery books for kids on air?
I do remember that.
And I remember thinking like, oh, they're right. That would be a really good side hustle.
I had I had never even heard of this term ASMR.
Yep.
Yeah, right. I had somebody recently on Twitter say the same thing, like you should do ASMR videos. I had to look it up because I didn't even know what they were talking about.
Melvin just eating an apple into the microphone or crinkling some paper or
Yeah.
well, that is a good segue into what we are going to talk about today, which is creating successful online courses or successful courses in general, and what kind of things to look out for when you are trying to create other streams of revenue. I think you probably have heard many, many times that, oh, I want to make passive income without having to do a whole lot of work. Because I think a lot of therapists are getting to the point of burnout or just looking to grow and scale their businesses. So tell us a little bit about course creation and the passion behind it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this pandemic has altered so many people's lives, and I think as clinicians, I think many of us are thinking like, what does our career look like? I feel like in maybe in a much more intentional light. And yeah, for me, my course creation journey started in 2015. At the time, I was full time, 5.5 days of clinical work, split between about a day of assessments and then the rest therapy clients. And I launched my podcast back in 2015, and I would say a couple of months afterwards, a handful of folks started reaching out to me wanting consultations on launching a podcast, and I had this idea of like, I wonder what it would be like to just like turn that knowledge into digital form. And I was like, oh, maybe I can create an online course. Never created an online course, had no idea what I was doing. I have definitely made a ton of mistakes. I think a ton of like really good things in hindsight, but a ton of mistakes as well. And my course this year passed the $300,000 revenue mark, and we just passed, I think, our 272nd student. It's a podcasting course for therapists, and yeah, it's been a journey, and I'm like so grateful to be here and just happy to be a resource as we even think through this because yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like I think there is this space of passive income, like many of us are thinking about it, but and then the natural thing is like courses. Oh, I can do a course, and as you and I have talked about, like courses have a passive element, but the maintenance and even the building of them are not passive at all. So,
Yeah, I almost cringe when I hear like passive income. Not saying that it can't be done, but just the amount of legwork that has to go into creating a product that can sell and is valuable and that people want to purchase and have something to offer. Also, congrats by the way on hitting the 300,000 and counting mark. That's really exciting. Um, do you ever see yourself like graduating with your PhD or PsyD thinking, this is where my career is going to take me?
yeah, yeah. So I remember I finished up my postdoc. I'd gotten my PhD the year before in 2012. So this is actually 10 years since I got fully licensed. I did my internship and postdoc in Nashville, in Tennessee, and then we moved up here to Philadelphia. And short answer, absolutely not. I was actually talking to my partner about this the other day, and it's crazy because Patrick, to be honest, like I thought I was going to be a university counseling center psychologist, like maybe get up to like training director, assistant director, and then like do like a handful of private practice clients on the side. And I thought that was going to be my career. Never did I imagine like in 10 years it would shift to this.
That's amazing and something to really, really celebrate and be proud of. I mean, I always assumed getting my master's was the finish line and becoming a therapist in a community mental health center was it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I saw the possibilities. And I think that's the beauty in what we're talking about today is that there are possibilities and that therapists and mental health professionals have so many skill sets that are so applicable in so many different arenas and they can also be monetized. And it's just about a lot of different factors going into it, but really understanding that there is a market for course creation, a big, big market right now, especially as people have moved into a virtual era of psychotherapy and mental health care. So you were talking to me about some mistakes that you often see made, and I'd love to talk about common mistakes before kind of going into how to create something successful. Because I see a lot of those too, and I made my fair share of them, as everybody will who's listening to this. You will definitely make mistakes and stumble along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad like we can talk about this because yeah, one, I think it is really important to talk about like one, normalize that the journey is not like this, exponential growth up. I think especially like in the online space, at least I sort of saw this and then I kind of fell into it like, well, like so and so had a six-figure launch, their first launch. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, why is mine not working out? And I suspect of the folks that launch successful courses, I think the vast majority actually have very slow and sort of like boring growth. It's just that they kind of show up and iterate and tweak over and over. And I mean, that's what it was for me. I mean, this has been a 7-year journey, to get to this point. So I think that's probably the first sort of mistake that I see, which is I got to like get up to this revenue marker by this amount of time. And it's usually measured in like months as opposed to like trying to measure it in years. Right. And yeah, I mean, I would love even to hear, Patrick, like your thoughts on that, because I think that's really interesting as well.
I'm really glad that you started with that point because I think it's so easy to get into the comparison trap of, like you said, what is wrong with me? How come this isn't going the way I thought it was going to go? I was assuming I was going to make $500,000 this year. Um, Nobody even bought it, or only one person bought it. And I think social media plays a role in that, right? Like we're seeing like everyone's successes posted all the time. And good. I'm glad for that. I'm all about that mentality of like we can all be successful, but I do think it can also create this insecurity and this imposter syndrome too of like, what the hell am I doing wrong here? But you're right. I mean, a lot of this is trial and error and tweaking things as you go and learning from mistakes. And I know when I launched my first Taking the Leap course back in August of 2020, I had done a beta test with some friends here in Asheville, and I was like, could this really be a thing where people would pay for me to teach them how to build their practices? Like, Allison per years here, she's a friend of mine, but I think to myself, why would anyone hire me if Abundance Practice Building is in the same city? But did a 6-person Zoom for 6 weeks and just like beta tested. And the feedback was like, yeah, I would probably pay like a couple $100 for this. And then fast forward to, just wrapping up my 4-month Take the Leap program, which had a price tag on it of about 5,000. And just the fact that it took a lot of trial and tribulation to get here. And even now, there's still bumps along the road where you're still like ironing things out and improving and editing and learning from mistakes and, scratching things off the list of saying, like, I'm not going to use that again, or I'm not going to do that again, or, ooh, that worked really well. And the ability to improvise and kind of create and learn as you go is really important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like it speaks to the mindset, which for me, it's like instead of, I guess the best sort of image is like, like in undergrad, this is going to be such a silly, maybe it's silly, but one of my, like I loved my art class that I took, and one of my most favorite memories was actually on like Saturday evenings when people were partying. I'd be in the art studio, just like painting away on canvas. And I think that's the sort of mindset or the image to embrace, right? Like you're an artisan that's like finally crafting something over time, insta and over time, right? The combo of you crafting it, getting feedback, from students, all of that, that's what makes it a beautiful product. For me, like initially, I thought like the pressure had to be all on me to craft it, right? Whereas I think shifting it and saying like, hey, maybe this is something we can co-create together, and that co-creation is likely going to happen over a long time. I think that was very eye-opening because I mean, to be honest, like Patrick, like I made when I first launched that course, I know where the idea came from. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do I can see podcasting is starting to take off, but there's not really a community for like healthcare professionals. And so I was like, you know what, maybe healthcasters will first just it'll be a podcasting course and community, and I called it for health, wellness, and fitness professionals, right? And in my mind, right, again, I launched Selling the Couch April of that year, and I launched this course in November of that year. I'm like, that is so niched. Like, oh my gosh, like that's because I had seen some other courses that were just like general podcasting courses, right? And that was a big mistake I made too, because I mean, how in the world do you talk to that big of a population, right? Health, wellness, and fitness, right? So everyone from surgeons to therapists to, I don't know, like somebody who's interested in keto, right? Like all on one sales page, right? And that's like one mistake I made, and definitely something I would always recommend is niche down and layer it down to almost a level that you're uncomfortable. And the way that I like to do it is I like to say like if one person looks at my sales page, can they see themselves in that sales page?
Love that. And that's such a good reminder of how important niching down is. And even if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking about your private practice, I know that it can be really challenging to say, but I'm going to exclude people. But what if this isn't for everybody? And what I think, circling back, fast forward from that time when you launched both of those simultaneously till now, how many downloads have you had on your podcast? I mean, it's in the millions.
Yeah, it is crazy. I mean, the very first day I had 9, and I'm pretty sure 4 of those were like me on multiple devices. So yeah, and we recently passed 1.4 million, which is kind of crazy. So
That is amazing. Congratulations on that. Do you think that happens though if you hadn't niched down and gotten really specific about what you wanted your vision to be?
I don't think so. I think like I think almost like, and I talk to a lot of like online creators outside of our space, and the ones that have like large followings, like I have a good friend, he's got like 200 plus thousand followers on Twitter, right? And he always tells me like he niched down to a very specific population, and then as he sort of started to get a like a hit a certain threshold, and I don't know what that number is. I think it just varies depending on the platform, depending on what it is. Then he started to expand out, you know? But what's
Yeah.
interesting is the more recent conversations we're having now, he's like, maybe it's not about just these numbers, right? Maybe it's about the quality of people that I'm attracting to, right? Because if you attract a whole bunch of people, but they're not actually interested in products or services, is that really worthwhile kind of thing? It just becomes a vanity metric.
That is such a great reminder. Again, like circling back to that comparison mindset, even if you're only in it for the follows or the likes or the downloads or the shares, is that really doing anything in terms of monetizing? And maybe it's not because you're not attracting the right people. And I think quality over quantity for sure. And especially as you're growing at first and really trying to get an idea of what you're trying to create, because it's really easy to get caught up in the like, oh, I'll just fit one more person in this course. Oh, here's this one extra sales. They're not really a good fit, but like the dollar sign is in front of me, and then you can disrupt the milieu of something that you've created as well. Um, have you run into that at all, or have you seen that happen for people?
Yeah, I mean, I can even share a personal story of this. Absolutely. So this was probably about 3.5, 4 years ago. Yeah, 3.5 years ago. I a like a podcast. I think it was like a podcast coach or a podcast editor. Someone else in the podcasting space that was not a therapist reached out and was like, "Hey, I'm really interested in your course. Love." And so initially, I was like, "Hey, this is really built for therapists. It's probably not really really good fit for you." But they were pretty insistent. So I um I was like, "Okay, it's fine." And we can talk about this later, but I from pricing, like I've gone the gamut, from a 297 is when I first released the course. Then I went to a membership model because everybody kept saying like the money's in recurring, right? So at that time, this person had signed up, and I think it was like, I'm going off of memory, but like 47 a month or something, right? I didn't value myself to say like you have to commit for an X amount of time, right? So this person literally paid 47. They were super gun ho. Then right before they got to the next payment thing, like the 2 days before, they cancel. And I'm like, what in the world happened? And then I look at the analytics, and basically they had gone through all of the material, and I think like taken it for their own sort of benefit. And that felt so bad. Like, I mean, I share that because, like, I don't know, it's gonna happen. I think just as you sort of share your course with others, but it also doesn't represent everybody, but it's just sort of the nature of the things that I think sometimes people don't talk about. There are people that, sort of try to game the system or are more about, trying to learn, but not really thinking like, oh yeah, that's somebody else's business.
Absolutely. And I think that happens a lot of the time. I see that in membership sites, especially where you can go in and cancel at any time and download everything the person's created and then make it your own. And then all of a sudden, here's so and so selling their own like templates or packages or coaching programs. And it's unfortunate and it does happen. And thankfully, it's not happening constantly, but it does happen. And you have to protect your intellectual property for sure. I like that you named like starting your program at 297 and then a membership program, and pricing really evolves over time, and that's also kind of a beta testing point at first to kind of get a sense of like there's so much stuff that we have to work through financially, right? Like money mindset work and our own narratives about who will pay for what, but really trying to figure out how to value something. And do you have any advice or suggestions for people who are like, I want to start this course, I know I have this great content, but I really don't know how to price it?
Yeah. So I would actually say, and I don't know if this is like a little controversial, but I would say like don't focus on pricing first. Focus on validating the course with paying students. And then the second thing also is think about like what your vision is, right? So and the vision may change like it did for me. My initial thought was like the course is an important part of it, but what I wanted to do was really create a community. And what I realized is I needed a core group of people that were invested in podcasting in order for the community to thrive in the long term, right? So my point initially was not, or my goal initially was not necessarily revenue. It was actually quality students. And then I think once we sort of had quality, then we could kind of play with the price. I mean, you asked about like tips. So it's interesting, right? Like the folks that will say like pay one off, pay, 497, 997, 1497, whatever dollar course, right? They will say the advantage of that is you can, somebody pays you one time, you're not sort of obligated to them over, multiple months, whatever. They can do whatever with the course content, right? The disadvantage of that is one, there can be more refunds, right? Like on larger transactions. The second thing is, ultimately, especially in the early stages, and I would say even throughout, as course creators, we can get stuck on revenue being the end goal, and that is an important metric. But actually, people completing the course and having success and being willing to share it with others, either via direct testimonials or just word of mouth, right? That's what ultimately drives future sales. So you could have like amazing sales, but if nobody actually completes the course, right, then you're setting it up where it's going to be hard to get those future sales. So that's the one disadvantage I think of the one-off payment. The disadvantage of the membership is exactly what you said earlier, right? You can have a ton of content, you can put your heart and soul into this, but if you're charging 47 or 67, what's stopping somebody from, canceling in 1 or 2 months stuff that you've learned over years? And so, I mean, where I've kind of arrived with my courses, and again, this is evolving because, like, you know, yeah, this is all like evolving over time. So, like, where I arrived is I have a cost for the course, and then they can upgrade if they want community and coaching access. Right.
I like that. I think we're seeing that more and more in a lot of courses and programs of like, here's the cost for the course, and here are some a la carte options if you want to have um, more communication, more support, more coaching, more involvement, because all of this stuff takes so long to build. Even a community, like you're mentioning, a community takes so long to build. And I know a lot of people, myself included, who have created membership sites in the past who just could not get the engagement going. And people would fall into this membership, but there's not a whole lot going on. So there's not a lot of engagement. And then ultimately it kind of crumbles. And, I kept thinking, like, how can I have a Facebook group of 7,000 people engaged all the time? They've paid to get into this membership and nobody is engaging. So it's just interesting when you start to see that stuff happen too. And I think being able to adjust and pivot is really important, because it would be very easy to say, well, I tried. This clearly isn't for me. And I don't know how to become a course creator now.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I think, I mean, and to that point, I mean, this was actually a mistake that I made. Is I mean, I know why I did it again in the moment, right? Like you have the data and it makes sense. I started my community, the community aspect of the course on Facebook. It was a Facebook group, right? And this is back in 2015. Facebook groups were brand new, right? So Facebook was heavily promoting Facebook groups. So pretty much anytime anybody posted in that group, everybody could see it, right? Literally, I posted something the other day to my free community, which is like 9,900 people. Can you guess how many people saw that?
Hmm, that's a good question. I don't know. I would say, depending on the content, maybe a couple of hundred.
31.
31. Yeah.
31,
It's
which is crazy, right? Like, I mean, because we're at the mercy of these algorithms now. Like, you put your heart and soul into these courses and communities that we build. And, it's just, it's very disheartening. I think one thing I learned from that experience, and this is something we've done with this mastermind that I run now, we actually took it completely off of Facebook and just put it on like Circle. And just because I didn't want to keep like being pulled by these algorithms.
absolutely. And that can get really discouraging too,
Mm.
what you're saying of like creating this content that you feel really good about and sharing with the world. And you have this audience, but because of the algorithm, maybe 99% of the audience never sees it.
Right. Yeah.
And then that can be very frustrating. So being able to move off site, off of a major social media platform, can be really advantageous for people.
Yeah. And I mean, that comes with its own downsides too. I labored about, going off of Facebook and Circle to Circle. Mighty Networks is another one I know that a lot of folks use. And even like 2, 3 months into it this year, I was like, man, we should go back to Facebook, right? Because it is like the other side of that is, right, like something like a Mighty Networks or a Circle, it's not natural for folks, right, to be like, I got to log into another platform that's not Facebook, even though so many people don't like Facebook, right? So,
You're so right. I told my VA that when we were moving to can't remember. I think it was Learn Worlds, or I don't remember what platform you were using at the time to try to do a membership. And I was just thinking, I was like, I think the complication is that it is one more thing for someone to have to remember to log into. And people are so used to just opening their phone or their laptop and they're on Facebook and there it is. But then you're right. So many people also hate Facebook. And there is that like that dilemma there as well. But it sounds like you've figured it out of how to make it happen. And that is a good testimonial for people who are listening to hear, because, like you said, this was not an overnight thing. This was years of trial and error and figuring things out and learning and making mistakes and having support and resources around you to get to a place where you are now in a place where you've passed, like you said, 300,000 in sales and revenue. And that is not a small undertaking.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that. I think I heard something years ago from, I think it's from Ramit Sethi, and he said, when you build an online business, you have to think of it in stages. And I think he said year one is learn, year two is earn, and year three and beyond is scale. And I think a lot of times, I mean, I know I fell into this. Like, I think a lot of times therapists can be like, I want to be at that earn stage or I want to be at that scale stage when we haven't even learned about the market. We haven't validated the course idea. We haven't had one on one conversations with potential students. We haven't run beta groups like you ran. You know, we haven't gotten any sort of survey data, anything like that. And yeah, I think it's just a good reminder, to always remember the stage you're at, and especially don't compare the stage you are to what you may see on social media.
It seems like that's going to be a theme here
Yeah.
of not comparing yourself to social media or what people portray themselves and their businesses to be on social media.
Right.
Really, really important. I can't tell you how much coaching I do around that. Um, but that's really great advice. Learn, earn, then scale. And even with private practice, people are so ready to just open the doors and like, how come I don't have these like, you know, 6-figure months or whatever the case may be right off the bat? And there's a lot of testing that has to happen at first to figure out who your niche is, who your clientele is, what your marketing strategies are, what works, what doesn't. I mean, there's so much that goes into this. So, really important to remember that as well. You had written down a few other tips or some things that you saw as common mistakes. What else kind of comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say the next one I would say is like gear. Specifically, I think it's very easy to like see some really nice courses, right? And so I'm gonna kind of say gear slash marketing maybe. So it's so easy to see certain courses and see the video quality or the audio quality and be like, man, I want that. But a lot of times we don't see what the first version of that course looked like. Uh, I mean, I can even share with mine. You know, I no one gave me the memo on this stuff, so I recorded the first version of Healthcasters, and one of the videos was about how to set up your podcasting mic so that you get really good sound. Because most of us don't want to spend thousands of dollars on soundproofing and all that stuff, right? So I bust out with a Dark Knight like Batman t-shirt and my mic has like a purple light on it instead of me like putting tape on it so it's not shining all over the camera and on my shirt. Like it's wide exposed so it looks like the Batman symbol is like on my shirt, like the purple whatever, right? So and then I totally forget that, I've got a webcam and I totally forget to like look around and make sure there's nothing that's distracting. So like half my window is exposed and it just looks so awkward. And it's like, super like intense sun coming on one side. So my face looks completely washed out. And I'm so glad I was so naive in those early days because like, and I think I say it in like to be funny, but I think a little bit of just curiosity and just being naive, I think it's actually a good thing in the course creation space because so many of us like we worry about the perceptions of others, and I struggle with this a lot. And because of that, we never actually even put the first product out there or the first iteration to get any sort of feedback. you know? And I know that video helped a lot of our colleagues, set up their mic. Was it the most aesthetically pleasing? No, right? But, but I learned, and then, that I think it took probably another 6 edits, 'cause so I try to, like, edit the course, like, once, like, update the course, like, any relevant sections, like, once a year, and I think it took 6 of those iterations to finally get to, like, a halfway decent, like, recording, So,
That's such a great tip and reminder, like, to really pay attention to. And what was the first thing I asked you when you got on here? Like, I saw your setup and I was like, oh my God, your setup is so beautiful. And you said, yeah, this is like 7 years in the making. And that's kind of what people need to try to remember right now is it really, I mean, there's resources that go into this and there's a lot that goes into this and you grow. And as you're making money, you reinvest it and you learn from some of this stuff too. And you're so right about just like offering quality off the bat instead of the thing that looks like really shiny or really nicely done, because that's really much more important, especially in the beginning stages as you develop a reputation and people are going to trust you enough to pay you their money to really deliver. And one thing that stood out to me when I was starting was that I was doing coaching at the time with someone and I had only had like 6 people in one of these courses instead of the 8 that I wanted. And I was really like down on myself. And they were like, listen, give an absolutely incredible experience to those 6 people. Going back to what you said about testimonials and how that is really what starts to build that momentum and that audience at first is other people who have taken your courses or your products and then are recommending them elsewhere and how that spreads. And now, I mean, I buy into that 100%. And I think it's really easy to get into the mindset of like, "Oh, but I didn't sell it out. Oh, but like I didn't make the, like you said, the revenue that I wanted it to make." So really remembering that your first year, you are really trying to deliver quality product and quality courses and quality information for people, because those people who take your initial courses and the first offerings are going to be the ones who are also telling other people, telling their friends, telling their colleagues, sharing your stuff. So developing those relationships are really important.
yeah, 100%. I'm like a big believer. I know you are as well. Like, I think authenticity and integrity, I think, matters so much, especially in the early stages. Throughout, of course, but like, especially in the early stages, like, and then, I think a lot of times as course creators, it can be like, a well edited video is what matters, but not really, right? It's, can they see you as a person? Can they trust you? Right. And all of that stuff, like, and it's not, I've never heard someone tell me like, Mel, I so appreciated that you made that like B-roll edit, at the 130 mark on that second video, because that's what made me realize I wanted to share it with somebody else. Like, it's
Absolutely.
so, yeah.
Nurturing those relationships really important. I was on your podcast talking about networking and nurturing relationships, and I think that same thing goes for course creation, like nurturing the relationships, the people who have paid you for your time or who have been participants in what you've offered, really ensuring that they have a good experience and that you address concerns and answer questions and are open to feedback. I think the feedback process is so important. And I heard you say something about surveys and of course completion, and it's really important to gain that and not take offense to criticism too or feedback that comes in. It can be easier said than done sometimes, but really important to try to be open minded to that as well. Um, were there other tips or mistakes that you wrote down before we started talking?
Yeah, yeah. I have another one, which is like related to the marketing one. And that's, I talked to somebody recently, a friend recently, that got to go and witness like a big online entrepreneur and their course launch. They got to go witness it live, right? And this is somebody that typically, pulls in, 6 if not 7 figures in every launch, right? And I was like, "What was that experience like?" And they were like, "Well, it's really surprising because when you look at the videos, it looks like it's just them talking and teaching, but they had like a staff of like 12 people that were there, and everything was down to like the minute. And it was kind of stressful being there. And so I think one thing I just took away is, for most of us, right? Like we don't have these like humongous marketing teams to launch these courses. And so it's just being like graceful and kind to yourself and saying like, hey, like I, I'm I'm where I am, and that's okay. I'm not trying to compete with them. Maybe at some point I'll get there, but it's okay if I don't. So
Love it. Yeah, I think that's really important to keep in perspective. And that can go from anything as simply as, like you were saying about the setup, as well as, oh, I know other people have VAs, or I know other people have marketing people. I know other people have these people in their corner. That can happen, and that will happen as you grow. But at first, most of you are not going to have the budget to hire an admin assistant and a virtual assistant and a social media person and someone to transcribe podcasts or whatever the case may be. It takes time, and it really is, again, about delivering the product, not comparing yourself to other people and what you think that they are doing. I can't stress that enough. And for those of you who want to create courses that are listening, it's totally within your wheelhouse. And please don't allow yourself to go into imposter syndrome mode of, but there's already a course on this. Because again, like Melvin said, authenticity and integrity, your authentic personality and voice and how you show up is really, really important. And that's really the selling point here too.
yeah, and the other side of that is, and that thought you just shared, Patrick, like crippled me because when I was initially thinking about launching the course, this is a little embarrassing to admit, but the person I learned podcasting from, I actually emailed them to get their permission to launch my own course because I felt like I was like stepping on their toes or something like that. But fortunately, they said yes. I don't know what I would have done if I said no. But, I but this is something I learned is if there are existing courses out there and you're seeing like on sales pages, like one, they're charging like premium prices, and two, by the way, our daughter woke up. I hope you're not hearing that. Uh, uh, and uh, and if they're charging premium prices on for those courses and they're getting sales, like that's a great validator of a course idea, right? It shouldn't stop you. It should just more be about like trying to find the best niche, like can I niche this down to a certain population, you know, or in a different way than
Absolutely.
they're presenting it. So,
For sure. I think that's a great validator. That's almost like market research in itself to say, okay, there's already a target audience here. There's already a need. There's already something that I need to fill from my own perspective or from my own lens. So, and I want to just circle back to what you said about asking that person for permission. I did something similarly with a colleague of mine, like, hey, I'm thinking of becoming a private practice coach, and I know that you're a private practice coach, and I just wanted to make sure you were okay with that. And again, I don't know what I would have said if they were like, no, I'm not okay with that. But
right.
I think that is that's a totally valid thought and feeling and experience. So just wanted to name that.
Yeah, I think so many of us, like, I know the folks that listen to your podcast, that listen to my podcast, we have genuine hearts, right? And we are so conscious about not intruding on anyone's space or anything like that. And I know where it's coming from. And at the same time, like, I feel like all of us have unique gifts and abilities. And there's going to be people that you will attract, maybe that another private practice coach will not, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's a good thing to remember. I'm not recreating the wheel. I did not create the idea of private practice. So I think we can get into this mindset of like, am I allowed to recreate, or am I allowed to recreate the wheel? Am I allowed to kind of like take something that already exists and just put my own spin on it? And like, yeah, I can teach you how to build a private practice, but my coaching is much more about the the psychological and emotional side of being an entrepreneur. And that's my own take on it. And someone else is going to have a very different perspective on it. And we can both teach you how to get an EIN off the IRS website. Like that is not something that I need to learn or teach you how to do. So um, I think that can be said for a lot of courses that are out there. Like It's going to be your take, your ideas, your influences, your content, your creation around this that really makes it special.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Any other last moment tips before we kind of end to that you want to leave anybody with?
Yeah, I've just like one more, which this is actually a newer realization. So I used to think like a lot of these big course creators, their 100% of their revenue came from course sales, like the sales of the course. But what I came to realize is many of these course creators, and this is something you should think about as a course creator, is many of these course creators, their revenue actually comes on the back end through some sort of higher ticket offering, something, right? And so really think about like as you're thinking about your course idea, think about whether you can teach something, but then think about if there's a next level for a student of that course in order to that they could participate in, whether it's group coaching, a mastermind, an intensive retreat, whatever it is. Ideally, that should be a recurring thing. If you can make that sort of happen, um, it's just something to think about. I didn't realize it because I was like, how are these people like scaling like this? And, I did like the traditional launch and man, that was so exhausting. I did like two of those and I was like, yeah, I don't know that I can do this, you know? And, uh, and I really beat myself up over it, and until I realized this very fact is, they're really thinking about like a suite of offerings related to that course. And it doesn't mean you need to have five different offerings on the back end, but like think about just ask yourself, like, hey, if as someone is going through this course, what's the next level of support they would need?
Fantastic advice. And that is so important to remember. And like Melvin said, you don't have to have five offerings. You can have one really good offering. You could have two different pathways that you could help support someone, lead them down. But ultimately, knowing that once the course is done, they're probably still going to need support in some way or another. So if it is a mastermind, if it is coaching, if it's a small retreat, if it's something like that, that's really where you're going to make more of that money in terms of where you're funneling people who already trust the work that you've created. So you've got the relationship established, you've been nurturing it, you are also continuing to support them on their journey, and now you're offering something different that's going to be a little bit more high touch too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for making the time and coming on here. I mean, I really, really admire what you've created. And to be able to have you here as a guest on my podcast feels pretty surreal. So I just want to say thank you for that. And I really appreciate all the great information and wisdom as well.
Patrick, I feel the same about you. I'm just so grateful for our friendship. You're one of the most kind and authentic people that I've ever met, and you know a ton about travel, and you've given me so much advice for that. And beyond just, I think it's such a beautiful thing, this medium of podcasting, right? Because it's like colleagues become friends, and that's such a beautiful thing. And who would have ever guessed, right? Like, what is the chance we would have ever met, but except for this medium, right? So,
You're 100% right. And I can't wait until you do go to Maine and take those suggestions. And I love the Northeast, but I appreciate that. And I think that has been a really big blessing in terms of podcasting and just honestly, everyone kind of shifting to being more virtual, meeting a lot of people you probably never would have met in any other capacity.
right.
And also, please tell the audience where they can find more of what you're offering or where they can find your newsletter. I know that's a really good source of information as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we spend a lot of time on that newsletter and we just try to share like authentic and helpful information. So I created a free A to Z online course guide specifically for therapists that want to launch a course. And you can find that over at sellingthecouch.com/online course guide. And then we also run a mastermind. It's a year-long mastermind for therapist course creators. I know that so many of us want to launch a course, but just want to be with other therapists who get it and want that accountability and also a clear framework and also want access to, people that are living and breathing in the course space. And if that's something that you're interested in, you can learn more about that at sellingthecouch.com/mastermind.
Great information. And all of that will be in the show notes for everybody who is interested. And again, Melvin, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate you coming on.
Patrick, thank you again for having me.
For everyone listening to the All Things Private Practice podcast, there are new episodes coming out every Sunday morning on all major platforms. Like, download, subscribe, and share. If you're interested in more of what I have to offer, you can go to allthingspractice.com where you can get your free private practice startup guide, learn more about my entrepreneurial retreats that are happening all over the world, get more podcast information and course information. You can also join the All Things Private Practice Facebook group. Doubt yourself, do it anyway. See you next week. Thanks, everyone.